Welcome to episode 8 of the Spen and Nick Show. We are here at Founders Factory, the home of future builders and also the second home of Spencer.
Hey, yeah, awesome. It's pretty good to be in my second home. It's a bit, it's not quite as comfortable, but it's still pretty cool.
We've tried to make it homely with, I think we got rid of all the plants in the end, but we've got a light and, you know.
Maybe we need some greenery next time.
So this week we wanted to do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
What we wanted to do was kind of go into a little bit more depth of future builders and look at how you guys have been experimenting to kind of get to where you are right now. Mm-hmm. And I thought what I'd do is a really good way to intro that is to set the context for that. It's probably looking at our book of the year, which is Testing Business Ideas by the Strategizer team and David Bland and Alex Osterwalder. And it's nice because there's a couple of concepts in this book that you've used perfectly to help validate your idea. I know that you did it before the book was out, but there were some great things that you've done around social media ads and landing pages and customer interviews. So I really want to delve into that and see what we can learn so that people listening to this can maybe apply into their own businesses and find ways to experiment and validate their ideas. Yeah. Is that all right?
Absolutely, yeah, let's do it. Cool. It's going to be a tough one, I think, for us because we've been through so many tests as a company with so many changes as well. But yeah, let's go through the whole story if we can.
Perfect. So do you want to start by explaining, I think, can we go back to your university days and set us up with what?
Okay.
Can we go back to you? Because I think you've had the initial idea for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people listening might have had ideas at the back of their mind for a long time. So do you want to share with us what was the background for this idea for Future Builders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know whether it goes all the way back to university, but there's probably some kind of inception of this idea back then. And really, it's about learning. Mm-hmm. So what I've always dedicated my life to, I guess, for the last 15 or 20 years is helping people be better at their jobs, be better in school, be better in their social lives, their personal lives or whatever. Mm-hmm. And often that means, or when we think about people being better, it kind of the connotation is about learning to be better. Except learning and education have kind of got these black marks against them in many ways. They're not seen as kind of sexy or interesting often. There's a lot of ed tech companies that are not great. The whole ed tech space has not really worked because of this kind of, I think largely because of this myth about what education really is. Because everyone, whether they're a teacher or not a teacher or anything, is kind of an education expert because you've been through some education. You've been through the formal system of education. And a lot of people would argue that formal system is broken. There's a couple of ways that I think it's broken. So firstly, it's broken because we do most of our education before the age of 20, 21, 22. And the irony being that is that you haven't even started your career by that point, so there's no way that you could possibly know what job you're going to do for the long term. And particularly in the changing world that we're in now, people are constantly need to reinvent themselves. So I'm now getting close to 40, but weirdly, that means, and like when I was 20, I thought that age 40 was like near to retirement, right? Now, the reality is that I'm probably only a third of the way through my professional career, potentially, because I could be working until 70 or 80 years old. And so it was weird that most of my formal education was done 20 years ago. And
so you're nearer the beginning than you are the end.
Right, yeah, which is pretty cool. I mean, that makes me feel a little bit better about my age. But yeah, I think that's is true, and I think that therefore what we need is a different paradigm of learning, of continuous learning. So first and foremost, this is all about helping people be better, become lifelong learners, or the phrase that I really like is infinite learner, the person who has a completely growth mindset. And we've talked a lot about what that is. Check out a different episode if you want to know what growth mindset is. And getting into that space of constantly learning. Now, that's okay, and everyone believes that. That's not contentious, and no one, I think, that's listening is going to think that that's in any way radical. How we're doing things differently is that we don't think of courses, workshops, those formal kind of paradigms of learning as the only way that people learn. My problem has been over the last few years is that I'm learning so much, like literally all the time. I'm listening on podcasts, on YouTube videos, I'm reading blogs, I'm reading books, and all of that stuff is not formal and it's not get your credited learning for it. So how do I piece all of these bits of learning that I'm doing constantly into some kind of journey that evolves as I carry on learning, and then starts to get to the point where I can learn new stuff based on where I am and where I want to go. So the problem space that we're in is that formal education is broken, and that linear system of learning is not how people really learn in today's world. And how can we create a platform or a ecosystem where people can continuously learn, but can track and monitor their progress, and then ideally get recommendations on where they need to go and what they need to learn next. So that's the big picture stuff, right? What that really comes down to, and what that translates to, is the point that we've got to now, is collecting individual people, individual users, collecting great sources of educational material, be that a blog, be that a YouTube video, a podcast, a book, and collecting that into playlists of learning, and then being able to share those playlists of learning almost as experts or influencers in order for other people to kind of go on that similar journey as well. The final stage of that is getting to the point where the system knows who you are, what you're into, what you're good at, and what you want to be good at in the future, and therefore can recommend the next steps for your learning journey. So it's kind of like a graph of all knowledge that you're getting, the signal that you need, and the noise that you don't need is disappearing away from you, so you can be really laser focused on the things that are going to improve you and progress you in your job, in your life, in your personal career, everything else.
You didn't quite answer the question though about the university kind of context in which you had the idea for that long, but that was a perfect kind of context for the whole future builders and the product that you're building. But you did have the seed for this idea a long time ago, right?
So actually, yeah, you're right. It was my second degree. So I was doing a master's. This is probably back in 2008-9. Facebook had grown, doing really well. So social media is really starting to come into the mainstream. And what I saw was this opportunity to connect some of these social dynamics that are happening through social media to the learning space. And I was doing this a huge amount anyway. I was creating blogs with my students. I was a teacher at the time, as well as studying for an MA. And what I saw was that people were gathering all of these amazing bits of information from all over the place. This is way back 10, 12 years ago now, gathering all these bits of information from all over the place. Students of mine were doing this, and they were reproducing stuff and sharing it with the world. So not just consuming content, they were then producing their own content as well. And I saw that this was a massive opportunity to be able to, again, connect these, what I called then nodes of learning. And this is where like the idea was kind of there, but the terminology that I was using was completely wrong for the market and to help people understand. So what I said was we need to create a neural network of graph-based knowledge so that we can, so people can connect with different people so they can learn or follow their learning journeys. And at the time I called it, well, it's been through various names. It's been Mindfield, it's been NeuraLearn, it's been Neural, it's been a load of other different incarnations of different names. But essentially it's about connecting information, good content, knowledge from all over the web and connecting it together into a journey that then recommends a recommendation engine or a recommender engine for you.
And so now this has basically become Future Builders.
Yeah.
So that sets us up nicely. What would you say is kind of your value proposition, or how would you describe Future Builders in a lift pitch or an elevator pitch?
So I think I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I got to my elevator pitch as well, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to people about this idea, and as we started with Future Builders, it was a completely different company to start with. Mm-hmm. And it was based on creating a course to help people to learn to code. Now, there's loads of people that are doing this, and that was one of my worries, is that loads of people are trying to help people to learn to code. Actually, is creating a course the right thing to do? Surely a better option for this would be, let's take the best learn to code resources from all over the web that are freely available, be that on Harvard MOOCs, that are like massive open online courses, or maybe it's just a great resources called Free Code Camp, or there's a load of other ones that you can do for free, Code Academy, for example. So there's really reinventing that was a kind of a waste of time. Much better to connect a load of those things together to form a kind of a journey. And so in kind of talking about this, people were like, well, I don't get this node of learning knowledge. I don't get how this works. And I was like, and the conversation went with a potential user. So we had a kind of an interview with a potential user. They were talking about how the last course that they bought. So it was kind of a jobs to be done interview. I was looking for what course did they buy? What job were they looking to solve? What was the pain point that they had? What was it that they wanted to try and get out of it? The outcomes that they wanted to get out of it. And so we were talking about this, and then I was like, well, if you could have done all of that for free without a course. And he was like, well, sure, but where can I find the list of all the resources that I need? What I need is a playlist. I was like, fuck, boom,
it's done.
Playlist.
Game over.
It's Spotify. So
your value proposition, your elevator pitch is now
social playlists for your learning. In the simplest form, it's about creating content.
Spotify for learning.
It's Spotify for learning. If you want to kind of do the Uber of or the Spotify of, it's Spotify of learning. Social playlists, so it's about connecting with people as well as with great content. And it's about putting these things into categorized playlists. So you can do three things, and there's really three job stories that I'm trying to create here. One is I can store and recall really good learning content and recall it immediately when I want it back. So great content, you don't just watch once, you go back to over and over again. And the common problem that I found when I was interviewing people, actually doing one of these tests from the book without realizing it, was the customer interviews. This overall theme that kept coming was, I have lists of learning that I want to do. I have people having like project management for their own learning. They were hacking their own solutions to figure out what they needed to learn next. And because they're hacking solutions, that's a really good indicator that there's a problem that people need to solve themselves because there's not a really good solution for it. So with that kind of recurring message constantly coming through, we got to the point where actually, if we could create a platform where people go, they can save and recall their learning content. The second job story is that they can share it. Now, sharing is such an important part of learning. Sharing little snippets of knowledge yourself, so that reinforces your learning. Also putting people into the position of kind of expert or influencer. A lot of people want to get to that point and they want to share their knowledge. And that can be sharing playlists again, or it can be sharing their own content that they've created. We're sharing our knowledge through this podcast. The third job story is, if I'm here and I want to be there, how do I get there? So what's the journey that can start to get me to my next point? And it's not about saying, I want to be here in 5 years' time in exactly this job role. It's not about that destination necessarily, but about the direction of going, how about this next? How about this one next? How about this one next? So that you can start to move your way through that meandering path on the way to being better. So it's about recommended suggestions of learning that you
So if those were the three, just to finish off the customer profile, if those were the three jobs to be done, what was the gain, or what was the outcome that customers wanted, or the customers that you spoke to?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. And this really comes down to the nub of what jobs to be done theory is all about for me. So in one interview I had, what this chap, actually from Entail, one of our founder factories companies, and they run the podcast studio here, and what Rav said to me was, he'd reached a point in his design career where he'd kind of reached this ceiling point. He couldn't progress, and he wanted to move more into user experience design, digital design, app design, that kind of thing. And he was, at the time, was much more focused on pure graphic design. And he'd reached this point in his company where he couldn't get to that next step, and he couldn't get there because he didn't have the coaching internally to be able to support him to move on. They didn't have a job role immediately, and they basically said to him, "Go away, learn a bunch of stuff, and then come back to us, and we'll see whether there's another job role in the future." So he went off and he did a course on Udemy or Udacity or whatever it was. But the key thing for me around what his job to be done was, he wanted a promotion. He wanted to learn some new skills to get that promotion. But actually, if you go deeper than that, I think what he really wanted was job security and job satisfaction and safety. Okay, so we're talking about kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and when you go through that job story, it's not about, like, no one wants new skills. No one wants to actually learn. Really, when it comes down to it, if I could give you, no matter how much you love learning, if I could give you a magic wand and say, you either go through 3 years of learning to get that skill or to get those skills, or like a magic wand and you've got it, you'd take the magic wand and you'd do it. And because people don't want to learn how to build product or learn how to be a better designer, they just want to be able to design really good shit. They want to be able to build that product. They want to be able to do really good marketing campaigns. They don't want to learn how to do the marketing campaigns. So the job is more about how to do that stuff better.
Going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those are definitely the low order needs, but there are going to be higher order needs as well that your customers have. But I think we can talk about that in loads more detail later. But it's like Airbnb. What they customers for Airbnb just need somewhere safe to stay in a place that they're visiting.
Right.
But actually, their higher order need is to connect more deeply while they're with their spouse or whatever in a new location. Like feel like they're part of a bigger thing than themselves when they're going out, and there are some higher order things that are probably happening with your customers as well.
Absolutely, and I think that things like self-esteem, confidence, people's position in the world, really important things, and I think when you've got pressures of self-imposed pressures, but you've also got pressures of society at large, you've got pressures of LinkedIn saying what your status or your job role is. These are things that are there. They're deeply impactful for people and they're important for people. So I think that all of that comes into this need to continuously learn. I think one of the things that we're trying to do is enable people to constantly adapt, right? But if I told someone you need to constantly adapt, they're not going to listen to me, right? What you need to do is you need to get down to the message that is important for that person. And this is why I think jobs is really good. Jobs to be done is really good because it's not about taking personas and a blank demographic of people. This is about real interactions and real people, and then being able to find out their motivations and their forces that are going to enable them to make progress.
What are some of the frustrations and the pains that people are facing?
I think a really common pain is that we're finding with our early users, our early kind of beta users, is particularly in startup world, and we're finding a lot of resonance with the idea around people that are in startups, entrepreneurs or futurepreneurs, maybe people that are interested in product, in design, and the kind of things that we talk about with the podcast anyway. But what often happens is when you're into your first, second job after uni or in your career, that you reach a point where you need to progress. You have ambition. You want to move on to the next thing. Often when you're in the startup world, you don't have people kind of being able to mentor you through and give you job opportunities because you've got to be doing so many different things and cash is tight and you're not going to have big learning and development teams or HR teams or anything like that in some of these startup companies. So what we want to do is help people to give them the support that they need in order to get the progression, the self-directed progression that they need, so that they can then go to their boss and say, I can do all of these things. I need to be able to do this in the job. Otherwise, there's another 1,000 other companies that are going to want these skills right now, and that gives people a lever that they can start to encourage, or they can start to have conversations with their bosses and with the other companies to make sure that they're doing the work that they love.
Okay, so if you had to summarise very quickly, just re-summarise the top 3 jobs to be done, the gains and the pains, but just very quickly, please.
Sure. So store and recall great learning content from all over the web. It's job story 1. Job story 2 is share great content so that you can develop, but you can develop other people around you as well. And then the third one is get recommendations of where you should take your learning next based on where you are and where you're going. The big hope here is that we create the big vision stuff is about adaptable workforces that can remain competitive and stay in a job for a long term. But really that comes down to people progressing in their job and in their learning forever. And then the final question,
jobs, gains and pains. So that was the gain then?
That was the gain.
That's the ultimate outcome.
The ultimate gain is people, I think so.
It felt to me like the gain from your customer's perspective is not that, because I think that's a future. That's a forward one for the future. I think right now they want to have safety and security in their job, which is what you said earlier.
Safety and security in their job. Yeah, absolutely.
And being able to get the job that they want, or having the job they want.
Yeah, I think you can't deny that there is a transformation that's happening. We've got the fourth industrial revolution. We've got threats of artificial intelligence taking over people's jobs. It's undoubtedly going to be the case that people's jobs need to change, and that there will be, in 5 years' time, job roles that don't exist currently. So therefore, you need to have that adaptable mindset and adaptability. I think it's one of the key the key skills and behaviours that people need to have is to constantly reinvent and constantly adapt.
And so the final pain, how would you summarise that last one? Because that one was a little bit...
So summarise in as short a phrase as possible, which is not what I'm good at.
No, but this is what we're practising.
The pain is not be out of a job.
The pain is...
pain is not having a job. The pain would be not being able to support
maybe job
themselves.
dissatisfaction for the job that they're currently in,
and job security,
and job security having bad job security.
Yeah,
but that could be a pain or a gain, I think. Because I think they want job security. That's probably more the thing they're moving towards.
You're right.
I think they've got to me it's frustration because they're not able to organise their learning links is a huge pain, and the other pain is they're in a job they hate their job.
Yeah, I guess the levels of abstraction, if you kind of go down, is I've got 154 tabs open on my Safari on my phone. Right?
That's 154 tabs open is their pain.
That's their pain.
Done. Next time someone asks you, you go. That's done. I feel like we're learning a lot here already.
This is good. This is helpful.
So I think we've got a really good summary now of your customer profile. We've also talked about what Future Builders does and the history of it. What I want to talk about now, just looking at time, we've been talking for about 25 minutes, I think. Yep. So I'd like to spend the next 5 minutes or so talking about the tests that you did to be able to get to where you are right now. And then I think that's going to be it for this episode.
Cool.
So do you want to start us off by talking about the social media ads and the landing page work that you did?
Yeah, I'm going to do this really quick because I know that I'm talking about a lot. But it kind of goes back, and I want to talk about a pain point that we had as a company to start with, which was that we went into this, we assumed that we knew what people needed before we had done any tests at all for the first 2 to 3 months of the company, of starting the company.
Actually, I just want to jump in.
Yeah.
And just tell us a little bit how you made all the mistakes, because that's what you're kind of touching
on. I'm talking about the mistakes that we made.
So you know, like everything that's in this book, Spencer knows, yeah? And he knows, he's read Lean Startup a million times. But tell us about all the, like how you just neglected all of it, like everyone does.
Yeah.
And just went in and just made all the mistakes.
Yeah, literally, we came up with this concept of learning to code, the 0 to 1 of code, right? So paint the picture, there's a load of great content out there, there's great workshops that people can do, there's great courses that people can do to learn to code, software engineering, computer science, whatever. And there's great boot camps that people can do for 10, 12, 16-week boot camps that you learn really intensively. But to get onto one of those, you need to have an understanding of how to program and how to code. Actually, more than that, I think you need, and one of our hypotheses or theses really was, in order to be able to code, you need to be able to think first. Okay, so if you can't problem solve, if you can't think about abstraction, if you can't think about algorithm design, which is just really conditional statements of if this happens, then this should happen. If you can't think in that way, then there's no way that you're going to be able to program. So we came up with this concept of going, what's the 0 to 1? How can we get someone who's never even thought about coding before? How can we get them to the point that they would be successful on a boot camp or something like that? And we just assumed that people would want this thing, right? Because there's not one really good solution for it. And so we started the company with this assumption, with this belief that we can be the conveyor belt, if you like, onto other really good programs that are going to take people on further. And we built a platform. We built an online platform. It took about a month to build our MVP. We didn't really did a little bit of design, but we did no testing of any prototypes. We just went into a build mode. We had a CTO, we had a CEO, and at the time I was CPO, so Chief Product Officer. And then we built this thing in a month, and then we built 2 courses to put onto this learning platform. So like the alarm bells are already ringing and the frustration is so clear. We built basically a learning management system for no reason whatsoever when you've got hundreds of learning management systems out there. We built a course maybe for no reason because there's loads of courses and we could have connected them together, but we built a course from scratch with videos and with scripts and all this stuff, and took 2 months to do that. And then we tried to get some customers, and we didn't do big ads or anything like that. We went to our friends. Okay, if you've read the mom test or something like that, you know that you should not be speaking to people about how good your idea is if they're really close friends, because they're only going to tell you the things that you want to hear.
And they loved it.
And they loved it. Everyone loved it. Everyone's like, yeah, of course I'm going to sign up to this. We got 25 people sign up within like a matter of days. Thought, yeah, cool, let's serve it to them. Let's do a big launch and like celebrate this launch to those people. And then a month after that, we realised that only one person had even accessed one of the courses, and this person happened to be our product coach from Founders Factory, who was doing it partly because she wanted to learn a bit about coding, but to improve her product work, but because she was sat next to me day in, day out in the office, right? And because we were talking constantly about the product and how things are shaping up. But one person after a month. So really, after 3 months of doing this without really doing any testing, we realised that the idea was not going to work. It's not that the idea is bad, it's not that it's not needed, it's that it wasn't viable. It wasn't desirable either. People just didn't feel the need.
And so in terms of the build, measure, learn cycle, you literally went straight into build mode.
Straight to build.
You didn't start on
We
learn.
jumped, man, yeah.
You went, because that's the fallacy, I think, that most people, exactly, it
It
hurts.
hurts me, to even say this.
It hurts,
Yeah.
but that's what you did. You went straight, which I think is the fallacy with the build, measure, learn cycle, is that people think it starts with build, but actually really want to start with learn.
Yeah.
And therefore, after 3 months, then you kind of realised the mistakes that you'd made,
Yeah.
and went, okay, now we need to do some learning first, and that's where you did some social media ads.
Yeah, but again, I'm just going to go through the step by step, because we knew we wanted to do some experiments, and actually our CTO was really good at pushing for experiments, doing as many tests as we can, and he was really getting frustrated with the lack of tests that we had. So it wasn't just me. He kind of then motivated me to kind of get involved much more with experimentation, which is what I should have been pushing for much earlier. So a couple of failings there, but actually he pushed for it. And what we did was we came to this realization that we needed to change, and we all had different ideas about what it was going to be, what it could be. And we've got 3 experienced entrepreneurial people that have all got experience in different fields of education and technology. So we're coming at it from all different angles. So we had a session where we came up with 10 ideas each. So we had 30 ideas in the bag. In fact, I've just looking through a notebook here. I've got a picture here. I'll show you this, of all the ideas. So we've got 10 ideas from Jordan here, we've got 10 ideas from me, and we've got another 10 ideas from Sean. And we went through all of these ideas. We kind of voted and upvoted and this kind of stuff about these ideas. We tried to get to the point where each idea had a potential business model associated to it as well. So it wasn't just like a completely wild idea. But then we the 3 of us, and this was a kind of the first test, although it wasn't with real people, was let's think about this from a desirability point of view, from a feasibility point of view, and from a viability point of view. And some of the ideas were just not feasible. We couldn't build them. They might be built, but we just couldn't build them. So one of them was like an AI machine that helps people learn to pair when they're coding, so like collaborate when they're coding with an AI rather than a real person. So it's like an AI helping you to code, and like that's just not possible for us to do.
So go forward now. Fast forward to the social media ads.
Yep.
How did that work?
So from these 10, we reduced to 10 that we wanted to take forward for the 3 of us, and we decided in a week to literally create landing pages for each of these 10 different ideas, and then serve some ads for those 10 ideas over a week and see what was resonating, you know. I hadn't built a landing page for a couple of years. Well, actually, I have, but not in a business setting. I've experimented with a bunch of stuff on my own, but not in a business setting.
Business ideas.
Personal business ideas. I haven't done ads for a long time, so this is all kind of amazing learning from my perspective. And in a week, we built 10 landing pages and served up those ads. Okay, there's 3 of us. But one of the things I hear a lot is that when you kind of say you should run some experiments, landing page test experiments, people go like, well, that's going to take me 3 months or 6 months or whatever. Doesn't have to be that way. You can get something up online in a really hacky kind of way and serve some ads, you can do it in a day. You can absolutely do it in a day for 3 or 4 different ideas, without a doubt. We had a template that we had for each of the landing pages, so all we needed to do was change the copy. Super simple. And then we served up ads on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Reddit. LinkedIn and Facebook actually performed the weakest, and Reddit ads were absolutely fantastic for us.
Who would have thought it?
Right.
Who would have thunk it?
Who would have done? And like, it blew my mind, because I've not been a big user of Reddit really. But what you've got on Reddit is super passionate fans of these different topic areas of the subreddits that they follow, and they are like, if you can connect into one of those and your idea resonates with them, then you do really well. So anyway, long story short, we ran some of these tests. And we started over a weekend. By the Monday, it was clear that at least half of them were doing nothing, no traffic, absolutely zero, either the messaging or the idea or whatever it was, just wasn't resonating, and we killed them off. And we got to the point where within just a couple of days, we had gone from having 10 ideas and we got it down to 2. And the 0 to 1 coding idea was one of the ones we got rid of really quickly, because it just wasn't resonating at all. And we got to the point where we were looking at 2 different ideas.
That goes to the idea of pivot or persevere.
Right.
And that's where you pivoted.
We pivoted. As soon as you saw that data coming in, or the data not coming in, it was so clear that this had no desirability, and therefore you've got no business.
So those 3 months, waste of time.
We could have done that in a week. Literally could have done it in a week, if not less. I mean,
so that's a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, and when you're a startup that's got a finite resources, you've literally got a runway, and you die unless you can get some more money. When you've wasted 3 months, and our runway was 9 months at this point, we've wasted a third of our time by doing something that we shouldn't have done. So massive lessons learned, and I'm really hopeful that people can take that lesson and not fall into that same trap that we do. You will fall into the trap, right? A load of people will continue to fall into that trap. But we came up with these 2 ideas. We then went through another round of ads to see which one was going to work best. What was great was that both of them we think could have worked. But to give you some idea of an indication of numbers, we had about 100 people over a weekend sign up for what we called then Learnify, which is what Future Builders is now. Learnify, of course, being Spotify of learning. See what we did there?
Yeah.
Code name. And we had 100 people over a weekend sign up, which was staggering. We said our measure of success for these was if we can get to 10 after a week, then it's a good indicator. We got to 100 in a weekend. Amazing result. The other one got to about 10 over the weekend, so that was still showing good results. And if we hadn't done the Learnify one, that would have absolutely been something that we would have gone with. But it was quite clear that the Learnify was resonating with people in a really good way. So we turned off all the ads. We thought we were going to run them a lot longer. We turned them off, and we were like, right, decision made. It's so clear that the data is saying this. What we now need to do is run an additional set of ads about certain things. We wanted to do a pricing test, so we did another bunch of ads with the same concept, but we changed the price on each of the different. And we did 3 of those. We did one for free. We did one for $9. We did one at $15, I think, and one at $24 a month. These are so 4 different tests. What came out was the $9. Broadly was about the right kind of price. It definitely dipped the higher up you went, and then we were like, well, it's fine putting a price on, but if less people giving their credit card numbers, then we don't know that they're really going to pay. So then the final test that we did was we did a Stripe integration. So this is an online card payment system that you can integrate really easily. Like, I can do it. It's that easy. And we integrated that. So we took actual card payments for people wanting to buy a subscription to Learnify. Because it was just testing, we ended up refunding everyone. But we've still got those people. And from these tests, and we carried on doing a bunch of other tests over about another month, we built up a wait list of people of about 600 people.
Wow.
And so we've got a bunch of people now that are kind of waiting. We've lost a bit of engagement with them for sure, so it's going to be hard to get a lot of those people to activate onto the app when we launch it fully. But we have started to drip feed them into prototypes and MVPs, and we've got about, think it's about 10 or 15% of the people that we originally got signed up that have activated, have gone onto the app. And it's a very minimal, but viable working project. It's online. And yeah, so I think that's good going.
I think that's fantastic. That's a really fascinating story. And I think it's a perfect place to leave it for this week. I do want to summarise, I think, for the people listening. It sounds like to me some of the key things that we've learned from this episode is that if you have an idea, you need to get it out into the world and you need to test it very quickly. But you don't need to build a full-scale prototype. You certainly, if you're trying to build you don't need to create a whole learning management system like you guys did. But equally, it sounds like even if you know this theory, you're going to break the rules. You need to go through this process yourself to learn. So yeah, get your ideas out, test them quickly, get ads if you can, and see what people are like, what engagement is like with that. And who knew that Reddit was going to be the most popular one as well?
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is that I thought was really interesting was you had a really good understanding of your customer profile. So if you're trying to create a new product or a service, having a really good understanding of what is it your customers really trying to do here, what's the outcome that they want, and what frustrations and pains have they got? That's something that could be really good. Know when to pivot, as in quit, and know when to just persevere and keep going. So I think those are some like really important lessons that we can kind of glean from that. And I'm looking forward to the next session. I think maybe this is a two-part series.
Well, as you were saying, let's wrap up. There was I've got so much more I want to talk about.
Or maybe a 10-part series.
Maybe a 10-part series. I want to be able to talk about the prototypes that we did, how we went from a paper prototypes to high fidelity digital prototypes into MVPs and where we are now. I'd love to also to talk about the future experiments that I'm looking to run. So I think that has to come into part 2. So stay tuned. There's going to be loads more of this stuff. We're going to be probably retrospectively going through a bunch of these things about how I applied this to future builders and how we're constantly learning. And who knows, we'll see how it goes.
So look forward to seeing you next time in episode 9 of the Spen and Nick Show. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. We're already there. And like, subscribe, share with your friends, and have a great afternoon, morning, evening, week, month, life. That's good.